Greetings, fellow sleuths, and welcome to Mystery March 2025. And this year, we're going to be taking a look at Season 2 of the CW's Nancy Drew series. So, let's kick things off with the search for the Midnight Wraith. Nancy waits with the Drew crew at the club where they discuss their respective visions. Bess thinks it could just be a possible feature and not the truth, which Ace agrees with as he can't take it too seriously. George thinks their time is running out and they're going to die. Nancy reminds them to stay calm as they don't know when the Aglego will attack. Bess recommends getting rid of everything that was involved in their deaths, like Nick's truck. Detective Tamura walks in requesting to speak to Nancy. He needs her to identify a comatose girl who was attacked before being hit by a car. Her last words were Nancy Drew. Detective Tamura and Nancy go to the hospital, where George intercepts Nancy to warn her that Carson is heading their way. She agrees to strike Carson until Nancy is out of sight. George intercepts Carson, who has a new client, a patient in the ER. George goes to leave now that Nancy is gone, but Carson asks her how Nancy is doing. George lies that she's fine and staying out of trouble. In the meantime, Nancy doesn't recognize the comatose girl, assumes she knew about Nancy's reputation and needed help. She wonders if the girl was attacked by the Gorham Wraith, a vengeful spirit who feeds on people's fears on the full moon. She clutches the girl's hand, hoping she gets better. Tamura critically remarks that he does too, and that his answers line up with Nancy's. When Nancy leaves to look at her hand, which has copied the numbers on the girl's hand, she sends a picture to Ace for him to analyze. Ace and Nick are trying to remove the hook from the freezer, though the roof suddenly leaks blood, indicating that the Aglego isn't pleased with the removal. Nancy hasn't figured out the code yet. He explains it's an encrypted thread chain written to Nancy. She had a mirror that could be used against the Aglego and wanted to meet in the woods for payment. Ace finds a tweet online that claims Nancy Drew needs help with the Aglego in exchange for a cash payment. Bess admits having sent out the SOS. Nancy thinks the mirror could be the one the woman in white used to summon the Aglego. She asks the Drew crew who was going with her to meet the woman's partner in the woods, despite the potential vengeful spirit lurking. Nancy and the Drew crew go to the barn where they don't find anyone waiting. They do find a phone and a vial of sealed medication. The phone features several videos between Jane Doe, now known as Amanda, and her twin brother named Gil. She hears someone behind her and is grabbed from behind. The crow thinks it's the Wraith, and the pump Amanda spoke of is for his diabetes, meaning they have his medication. There's a lodge nearby where Gil could be hiding out, with Bess knowing that the lodge was built in 1850 and owned by the Hudson Family Trust. They go to the lodge to split up, with Nancy, Ace, and Bess going inside the lodge to find Gil. Bess hears a voice, but Nancy doesn't hear it. They arrive at a sitting room where a Hudson meeting is taking place. Everett Hudson spots them. Nancy, Bess, and Ace are taken to the basement where Mr. Hudson will see them. Ace notices a meat hook in the corner, but Bess worrying that Mr. Hudson will kill them. Bess and Ace think she should tell Everett that she's his granddaughter, but Nancy's strong against the idea. Everett joins them, with Ace and Bess using the opportunity to accuse him of being a murderer. Everett remarks on Nancy's quietness, to which he blames it on wondering about his secret council. He asks what they're doing there, just as Wright enters claiming to have invited her. George and Nick walk through the woods and discuss their relationship. He notices the tree where Gil was standing in the video, along with his footprints. George pulls out a map to determine where he went. They think he'll still be in the woods with the Wraith. His footprint indicates that he started running. Ryan claims he wanted to thank Nancy for finding the truth about Lucy Sable. He thought it deserved a conversation and sent some money. Everett is suspicious about meeting in the middle of the night, but Ryan has an explanation for all Everett's suspicions. Everett lets them all go, but stops Ryan to tell him that he needs to apologize to everyone upstairs when he gets back. But Ryan doesn't feel inclined to apologize to his next group of suits involved in Everett's new business venture. Everett reminds Ryan that their fortunes are tied, so if he goes down, so does Ryan. As Nancy, Bess, and Ace walk away from the building, Ryan catches up to talk with Nancy. She thanks Ryan for covering for her, to which he agrees, though he kisses him not being in her life doesn't include when she's in a jam. She asks back the money as she has to go, but he refuses to accept it, so she walks off. In the woods, Nancy asks Ace if he's okay, but He refuses to tell her she isn't like her grandfather, as they both drag their friends into bad situations. He blames her for the fatal curse. The drill crew finds remnants of an attack on Gillen and his insulin pump. Nancy notes this is now a rescue mission. As they head into the woods, a monstrous hand claws the forest sign. They find Scarecrow's tied to posts that are used to either keep the locals out or the Wraith in. The footprints lead around the Scarecrows. The best thinks they should turn around to call the police. One of the Scarecrows comes to life and attacks the Drew crew, causing them to run toward a bus. They hide inside to seal the doors. The Gill recommends that they keep their hands away from the windows. He doesn't care about the pump, and he just wants his money. He refuses to accept the pump without his money. He even tries to negotiate with them by raising his price for the mirror. He goes to a shop and Nick administers the insulin as his father is diabetic. Nancy looks for the mirror and finds it in Gil's bag, though he grabs her hand, warning her not to steal from a thief. And then knows his sister isn't with them. Nancy tells him that his sister is in the hospital, but they can't leave as the Wraith that's out there. To stay safe, they just need not to be afraid, since the Wraith sifts his victims out by fear. Gil wants to know how they piss off the Igleka, though Nancy wants him to explain the mirror first. He saw the Hudson Lodge as his father was the caretaker, claimed the mirror belonged to a Hudson ancestor, one of the first women to call to the spirit. They hear sounds outside but don't see anything. Nancy recommends thinking of happier times. Bess brings up her first 4th of July in Horseshoe Bay as the sparkly fireworks calm her. The bus is hit with something that makes it shake. Nancy remembers that as it was her first day at the Claw. Everyone remembers it as great except George. In the flashback, George yells at Nancy can order while Bess makes a mess of the kitchen, profusely apologizing to Ace. Nancy leaves the kitchen with the plates of food and bumps into Nick, which is the first time they met. He asks for a coffee to go. In the present, Nancy remarks that eventually the rain stopped. Bess notes the fireworks started. George got her sisters. Ace took Florence, and Nancy met somebody by the pier. Gil hopes the stories are making him root for the Wraith. Nancy notices Nick holding George's hand. The Wraith attacks the bus, but she refuses to leave as she won't let her friends get killed. It will stay and just sense her fear. The Drew crew run away. Nancy remembers all the terrible things that she's seen over the year, including the death of both her mothers, the masked ball, the Hudson family, and she realizes she's afraid of herself and that she's the worst part of everyone in her family. The Wraith bursts through the bus, and Nancy realizes is scared of fire due to electrical shortages. She throws a lighter at the Wraith, and the bus goes up in flames while the Drew crew watch. Gil pulls Nancy out of the bus seconds before it explodes. Nancy thanks Gil for saving her and gives him the $7.50 for the mirror, but he ups it to $9.50, which she complies with. She examines the mirror with the rest of the Drew crew. She breaks the glass to see the letter hidden under the glass. From sailors' lips, sweet songs were spun. Before the Igleka, only lies were spun. Dark spirit you seek, keeper of the deep, the truth lies hidden in their sea shanty. They ponder the clue as the police drive up with Detective Tamura, clubbing out to arrest Nancy for possession of stolen property, the mirror. Gil and Nancy are both arrested. Gil talks to an now-awake Amanda in the hospital, while Nancy talks to Detective Tamura. He tells her to turn around and remove the handcuffs, though he isn't the one who let her go. She leaves to find Ryan, who didn't press charges about the stolen mirror. He gives her the mirror since it belongs to her, as she is a Hudson. Ryan walks through the parking lot and sees Carson by a car. Carson's business is hurting since he was just accused of murder. Carson asks what's going on with Nancy, but Ryan refuses to tell him as it's a family matter. Ryan warns Carson that if he doesn't leave them alone, he'll ruin Carson by having him charged with kidnapping and telling the whole town who Nancy is. Nick's truck reappears at the Claw as the junkyard is flooded, a sign surely from the Igleka. Nancy meets with Ace, who's rubbing up the meat hook. She knows he blames her for getting them into the situation, and she wants to make it right. He's mad that he might die just as he's learned to be part of something. He never had a crew, and while he doesn't doubt Nancy will get them out of it, he's still scared. He asks her not to sacrifice herself to prove she's in Hudson, but because he doesn't want to lose her. He leaves as Nancy looks at the meat hook as the towel turns to blood and falls off. Dun dun dun. So let's take a look at some trivia surrounding this episode. According to Kennedy McMahon, The episode picks up an hour after the season 1 finale. The episode actually takes place 3 hours after the events of the clue in the captain's painting. The writers initially called the production number 118.5, but because the overall episode takes place in the 6 hours between the end of 118 and the beginning of what was supposed to be 119, which was remodeled into the season 2 premiere. So overall, as the first episode of season 2, this episode is actually kind of good, and I like the fact how it does pick up after the events of the season 1 finale. So yeah. So overall, I give The Search for the Midnight Wraith 4 Deer Stalkers out of 5. When I tune up and wait till the next episode, The Reunion of Lost Souls. So until then, remember everyone, the game's afoot.